Reverse into the hands of Presley. Presley, the wide receiver, just got lit up. J.L. Skinner laying the wood.
He's seen through things. Just an unbelievable job of seeing through. He sees the mesh and then comes back, and let's see how he fits it up.
As Curtis Samuels barks his signals from the shotgun. Good protection. Steps up, flushed, has room. On the roll, throws. Oh my. Picked off at the 15-yard line. Aaron, you got the feeling that Hunter White was the intended receiver.
Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting video. This is the first video of the Boise State 2024 football preview series. It's my third year in a row running this series, fifth year of doing the channel in general. So I'm super excited. This is going to be probably one of the best ones you've ever watched because I have not just one, but two former Boise State legends on today. Everyone should recognize J.L. Skinner from the recent history here for Boise State, playing in Boise State from 2019 to 2022. But everyone should also be familiar with Hunter White from the glory days of Boise State, 2008 to 2011. These are two exceptional former players for Boise State that have generously agreed to come on, give up their time to talk a little bit about this team that we all love and some things that we might expect to see out of this defense this year. So we're going to go through, I'll talk a little bit about both of these guys and what they did at Boise State, just do a little statistical recap of their careers for anybody that is that maybe missed them or has forgotten some of the great things they did. And then we'll talk about some of the Q&A. We'll just have some quick questions that we'll go through and talk about their times at Boise State and what they learned from playing with the Broncos. And then we'll talk about a statistical review of the Boise State 2023 season and just what stood out to us, some players and just overall stats and how the team performed. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the newcomers, some of the new faces for Boise State. There's a lot of exciting guys in this offensive side of the recruiting class that are catching the national media headlines, but there's some really, really good guys in this defensive side as well that I think are flying a little bit under the radar that might excite and surprise a lot of people, even nationally this year. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll get into some of the big questions for the defense. We'll go through the defense, starting with the front seven and defensive line. And then we'll talk about the secondary. And then we'll wrap up with three keys to the season and an overall summary and some predictions for the year. So this is going to be a great video. There will be highlights throughout the entire thing from both of these legends playing days, but also from Boise State season last year as well. So just getting started off, we got J.L. Skinner with me, Boise State 2019 to 2022 safety. He had 205 tackles throughout his time at Boise State. In 2021, he led the entire team with 92 tackles as a safety, 2 forced fumbles, 7 interceptions. In 2022, he led the team with 4 interceptions and also tied for the lead with 4 passes defended. He was all-conference first team in 2022, and he is currently on the Denver Broncos active roster, and we're excited to see what he can do with them this year as well. And then over here, we've got Hunter White, who is not such a recent graduate, but he is from the glory days of the Boise State football. Those days everybody loves to look back on and seems to hold every other team to those standards that because they did some incredible things. 2008 to 2011, Boise State linebacker. He was part of the recruiting class that included guys like Titus Young, Austin Pettis, Kellen Moore, Aaron Tevis, Dan Paul, Doug Martin, and others. 134 tackles throughout his time at Boise State, 10 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. He had an incredible career and was part of a class that went 50-3 throughout their time at Boise State. Thank you, both of you, for coming on and being willing to talk about the Boise State season this year.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Pretty excited. Obviously, I've never met JL either, so it's kind of an honor to be here. And some of us old heads definitely appreciate his time, and he was a human highlight reel too. So JL, it's great to have you on as well.
Nice to meet you, Mr. 50-3. My God, man, that's the same right there. Nice to meet you. Yes, sir. I appreciate you having us, man. It's gonna be a great time, man. Man, I feel like I'm in the presence of a legend right now. 50-3. I ain't never saw that one. That's insane. Ooh-wee.
That'll be definitely something that we talk about throughout this time, and whether or not this current Boise State roster and this incoming freshman class has a chance of getting close to those numbers in the future here for Boise State. So moving into the question and answer phase and just a little bit talking about your guys' time at Boise State, we'll start off with you, JL. What has the transition from college football to the NFL been like for you so far?
During the season, it's just, it's a business. That's probably the main thing. You see a lot more business side of it. Transitions from NFL or from college to NFL, I say it's a lot more you got to, it's a lot more diligent you got to be. This is your job now. It's not like you got school or anything like that. You really, this is your job and this is what you have to do. it's a lot more time you got to dedicate to it. You don't go home and have to worry about doing homework. You go home worry about how I have to recover. What I got to watch for film and doing things like that. So even the off season's been a little bit of a challenge to me as well because I don't know what to do with my time. You can only work out for so much, and then you got to figure out what to do with the rest of your time at that point in time. So it's a big transition, but it's something that you have to learn from your vets and learn from the people around you and really just take everything in and find your own route to do it with. So it's been a good little transition. Though. It's been fun for me for sure. A lot of learning points, a lot of growth for sure.
When you're playing out there in the NFL, you see a lot of familiar faces, former Boise State guys. Boise State has a long history of putting guys into the NFL, and George Halani recently competing in the NFL Combine. Hopefully he'll be another guy out there as well. How do you feel your time at Boise State set you up for success at the NFL level?
I feel like my time at Boise State, I feel like you get kind of put through a certain program when you go to Boise State. So it's not like you're coming from a school where, everything was kind of given to you. Boise State, they make you have to earn it from the very beginning. From when you're a freshman, they never treat you like you're anything special coming in. You have to earn everything. And, it's kind of how it is from the NFL as well. As a rookie coming in, they're not going to give you anything. You have to earn it. So I feel like Boise State prepared me for that mentally. Boise State built my mental toughness to a different level. So that way when I got to the NFL, not many things can get to me mentally. I'm always prepared and, always having my head on straight, always ready on the next play mentality because that's one thing that they drilled in me at Boise State, next play. So Boise State, it's just in that winning tradition. I want to get back to winning. Winning is fun. They teach you how to be a winner there, learn how to win and how to learn from your mistakes and stuff like that as well. So there's a lot of things I learned from Boise State, and I'm just grateful for it.
Hunter White, this one's for you, and kind of building off of those comments by JL. He talked about that winning mentality, that culture at Boise State. Obviously, it's the blue collar mentality that's printed on all of Boise State's jerseys, and that is a big part of the culture there. Can you talk a little bit about what that blue collar mentality and culture means at Boise State, and then how you guys just maintain that even while achieving a high level of success?
Yeah, I think that's, going back to kind of the days when I played, and Coach Pete, it's a different standard. And I know everyone says that, every program says that, but, and I know JL has friends now that played at other schools, and we just do things differently. We always have. And I think, not only is it that kind of blue collar chip on your shoulder, but we want to be a bigger program. We don't want to just be a good Mountain West team. We want to be a great national team. And that's been kind of the standard every single year. And with that comes high expectations, and I know the fans want, that the high expectation, but just as a program, I think that's, it's been a consistent thing that's driven in and better who the head coach is. So, I agree with JL on that kind of, it sets you up for success. I haven't played ball in a long time, but there's still a lot of things I remember from the meeting rooms, from the locker room, things that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life.
Your class, especially at Boise State, was known for a lot of those guys that helped build and cement that culture. Obviously, the blue collar has been a thing at Boise State for a long time, but you guys had guys like Dan Paul, whose name is now on the hammer that Boise State carries out. Do you think there was anything especially different about the way your class specifically throughout those 2008, 2011 time period approached the mentality and the culture at Boise State and what you guys did to make sure that you left your mark on the program?
Yeah, I think, it was a special time, it was a special team, but the one thing that always kind of stands out is just the competitive level, not just in the games, but in the practices too. We had our best players. Doug Martin was a flyer on punt. He's a first-round draft pick, and he's a flyer on punt in our game. So just wanting to be, the best you can be, but also, hey, what can I do for the team? What's going to make us better? Challenging each other in the weight room. It's not just practice field. Seasons are grueling, right? But, it's just being kind of head down, foot forward and just competing.
One of the great things about Boise State and what kind of builds on that culture is that the team is a lot like a family. Hunter, can you talk a little bit about what it just means to be part of that brotherhood? That's something that you hear a lot from current and former players and the impact and the importance of that being part of the brotherhood. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and what it means to be a part of that?
Yeah, college is a special time, 18 to 21 years old. And, obviously having a winning culture and a competitive culture and 100 guys in the locker room from, all over the country, it's special. I'm in my mid-30s now, but I still have group chats with my college roommates to this day. I talk to dozens of ex-teammates, and just kind of you know, it's just it's a special thing to be able to carry that in, because I always say high school is great. You still probably have some friends, but you really mature and grow up as an adult in college, especially with what you go through in the locker room for 4 years. So I think, I love everything Boise State. I'm overly passionate at times. I know you know that from social media, but I'm incredibly blessed to have graduated Boise State and still have the friends that I do nowadays that were teammates 15 years ago.
I'm sure something that you and your teammates talk about is the changing nature of college football since your playing time at Boise State. Can you talk a little bit about how you've observed the game change from when you were playing on the blue, and do you think that it's headed in the right or the wrong direction?
Yeah, I mean, I'm stoked players are getting paid, so I'm all on board for that. We got in trouble for taking Quiznos subs back in the day. So no, I mean, I think there's some challenges. I'm always going to back the player, right? What's best for him. I'm a big fan of the NIL. I do understand some of the portal stresses for programs and recruiting and not really knowing and having to kind of recruit your own guys. I understand that, there's big programs out there that are going to poach great players. I don't love that nature of it, but I understand it. So, and I think, one way to kind of counter that is, it's just kind of getting back to kind of that old school recruiting that Boise State had always had, and just worrying about what they can control. I'm super stoked. I know we'll get into this kind of recruiting class in this year and kind of the new momentum and swagger, but I'm all for it. I love the changes that are happening. I mean, it was the most watched college season ever. So clearly it's still going, right? It's not slowing down. So
JL, do you have any thoughts on the kind of changing nature of college football? NIL kind of came out right after you graduated, unfortunately, so you weren't able to be a part of that. But do you have any thoughts on changing nature there?
No, I like us getting paid, man. I like it. I like it a lot. I like the way we getting paid right now. Only bad thing is that I just hope that some people the paychecks are always nice, but you always got to think about this. You got to play at the end of the day. I know some people get put in situations where they get those little NIL deals, they go to school and they don't play at all. And then at that point in time, it's like the only money you're going to have now is the NIL because you're not going to the NFL because you just waste your opportunity trying to chase the NIL. So I just hope some people realize that as well. It's always better to have that bag, but you got to play too. Make sure you play in the NFL because that NFL money way different than college for sure.
Part of the changing nature of college football wasn't just NIL, though, and you experienced this, JL, during your time at Boise State. There were some adjustments to some rule changes in the college football world, and one of those was the changes with the targeting rule. You definitely seem to be the focus of some questionable referees at times with the changes in the targeting rule with your play style. What are your thoughts on the college football targeting rule and its changes, and do you think that they officiate it fairly across the board?
I thought about this one a lot, actually. I've been waiting on this question. So, look, I think they should go like this. It should be like basketball. It should be a flagrant 1, flagrant 2, eject. So, for the first one, say, for instance, if a person doesn't maliciously try and hit the dude with intent, from the head or neck area, all right, flagrant 1 them, flag it. Don't kick him out the game immediately. That's just wasteful. But then, flagrant 2, he do it again, then that's when you got to think, okay, he got to get out. He either got to get out, he got to sit out the rest of the half, spend the next game, whatever. But the first one should not be any ejection. No, that should be like a flagrant 1, gets to a flagrant 2. All right, he kicked out that game, he come back, then he does it again the same game, he gets back. All right, then maybe he gets suspended another game. Like that, then we can keep talking about. But getting 1 in the game, then getting ejected for a whole half, then having to sit out possibly the next half, that's the next game, the first half of the next game too, that's insane to me. So I'm not a big fan of it.
It's criminal too to eject a player for a bang play when he's playing fast.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Ball carrier lowers his head. It would have been a shoulder tackle. I mean, you can tell a lot of these really are not, malicious. And then it's like, hey, throw the flag. I'm fine with that. I get it. But you can't eject a kid for playing fast. You see it now in the playoffs. It's like, oh, so now when money's on the line, the NCAA is going to come back and revisit and be like, oh, yeah, we might want to redo these rules. So, unfortunately, yeah,
and especially because the offense, they don't even realize, but a lot of times, the offensive players can get targeted too because they lower their heads a lot. Them running backs, So what are we supposed to do? What exactly are we supposed to do in that moment in time?
And now any big hit, they just assume it was flagrant, right? So
flagrant every time. It's ridiculous. So Yeah, it's just a little different nowadays, but they'll get to a ground point on it soon, but they got to stop kicking dudes out for it, for sure. That's insane.
I'm sure that weighs on you mentally as they start to compound. And did you ever feel like it changed your play style at all?
Yeah, it did. Like, it does change your play style a little bit because then you worry about getting kicked out of the game. I got kicked out of like 4 games, I think, 1 year, 3 games 1 year. So it was like, man, at that point in time, I'm like, bro, I can't even play fast that much anymore because you got to be cautious of that. At that point in time, they can say you don't got a target on your back, but you do. Like, once you get one, they're looking for you to get another one. Me, I had too many, so they were just waiting for me to keep getting them. It was waiting on it.
That's what made you great, playing fast and putting
yeah, exactly. Like, I even had some reviewed, and they'd be like, no, it's fine. But I was like, man, come on now. I shouldn't even have that reviewed. So it's very interesting role for sure.
They didn't like you picking on all those Power 5 guys, man. That's what
I'm like, this thing is crazy, man. I'm like, this thing is insane. I had a target on my back every time. I was getting mad about it.
Dirk Koetter is now coming back as the offensive coordinator. And while this is a defensive preview, I did want to get at least your thoughts to hear, JL, on your thoughts on Dirk Koetter coming back. This is a guy that you got to interact with. He was watching over his son in 2022, and then he ended up taking over the offensive reins there in the back half of the season. What are your thoughts on hiring Dirk Koetter as Boise State offensive coordinator?
I love it. I love him. That's my dude right there, man. That's my dude right there. I love DK. Coach DK, man. He did everything for me my senior year. You know, he got me to the championship my senior year. I appreciate him because he came and did something that's real difficult, man. Came over and took out. I think we had like maybe 7 games left at that point, 7 or 8 games left. And yeah, he had came in, we started averaging like 35, 40. So it's like, man, yeah, I love Coach Koetter. You know, he's my guy. I still talk to him to this day. I'm excited for him, especially because he gets his whole spring ball with those guys. Oh, man. He gets a whole summer to scheme and do everything that he want to do. And I know Coach D going to let Coach DK go ahead and do everything he wants to do on that side of the ball. Oh, yeah, it's going to be a good season. It's going to be some fun for sure. And with them weapons, ooh.
Were you surprised?
This is even a preview, though. I'm not going to talk about the offense, but yeah, just know I know what's going to cook up over there. I already know because Coach Koetter, he's insane. He was scheming me up.
Boise State talked to 20-plus something candidates, and it was a lengthy process of a few weeks there before they announced the hiring. Were you surprised at all by going back to the well with Dirk Koetter one last time?
Yeah, I was. I was surprised at that because I didn't even know they really reached out to him. I didn't think that they would because I thought Coach Koetter was back, just chilling. So I didn't think he really was even out here looking to do something like that. When I heard he was coming back, I said, oh, yeah, we're going back to back. For sure.
100%.
Back to back. That's easy money. Yes, sir.
Well, last question for you guys, and this is for both of you before we move on. What is a favorite moment from your time at Boise State? A favorite moment or a game that you remember that you think about sometimes? What's something that you look back on and it's from your time at Boise State? We'll start off with Hunter here.
The first thing that always comes to mind is the Virginia Tech game at Redskin Stadium and running out with the hammer. Over 90,000 people, and it was not mostly Boise fans. I think we had like 8,000. They had like 82,000. They came out to enter the Sandman. It was probably the most electrifying game I've ever been a part of for sure. So going down there and more to Pettis to win the game at the end there was pretty special, and carrying out the hammer for that and 80,000 boos was awesome. Probably my favorite time.
JL?
Shoot, Oklahoma State for me. That game was probably one of the most – I remember one time when I was down in that game. I remember one scene from that game. Like third quarter, fourth quarter's dark outside. And I just look around and I see everybody's flashlights on. And when I tell you, if I had a GoPro on my head at that moment and I looked around and saw what that stadium looked like, it would have brought tears to your eyes. It's like a movie. Like I still remember that moment, like to this day, because I just stood in the middle. I remember I was at like the 40-yard line towards our locker room. My back was towards the locker room. And I just looked around and I was like, this is what they talked about when they recruited me. Like, this is it right here. So that was probably my biggest one right there, because that's when it hit me. Like, this, when they told me this is what you come to Boise State for, this is what you're going to play in. Like, that was that moment right there. And I just remember it like it was yesterday for sure.
Now imagine with the new lights that he has installed. Oh, man.
I wish I had them lights. The things go crazy. That thing's nice for sure.
You're gonna have to get back for a game this season so you can
I
experience.
gotta see him.
Time.
I gotta see him.
Well, that's a wrap for the Q&A section. We're going to move on to the statistical review. We're talking about this 2023 season, what this team was able to accomplish, and then we'll get into talking and breaking down this 2024 future expectations for this program. So, moving on to 2023, Boise State's defense, they took a little bit of a down year with a lot of faces missing from the previous season. They lost about 40% of their defensive production from the previous year. That was a really loaded class that JL was a part of. But despite that, statistically, they actually didn't have too much of a drop-off. They had 842 total tackles, which is actually 3 more than the previous year. They had 36 sacks, which is actually 6 more than the previous season. They had 11 interceptions. That one was 4 less than the previous year. But they also had 11 forced fumbles and 8 fumble recoveries. Their total turnovers were 19 turnovers. Compared to the previous season, they had 20 turnovers. So turnover-wise, it was pretty much the same as well. The big difference, though, and this is the one that really kind of put Boise State in a little bit of a different defense position, is they allowed 250.4 passing yards per game. That was the big difference. That's the most passing yards given up by a Boise State team per game since 2005. The previous season, 2022, Boise State gave up 167.7 yards passing per game for reference. Now, we'll talk about it. There, you got to remember they played some pretty heavy pass-focused offense. I mean, they had to go out and face Penix, and that wasn't easy. And that's one of the, almost 5,000 yards passing. They had to face Memphis, quarterback that over 3,000 yards passing. So there were some heavy passers, but it was also a secondary that had some struggles. And we'll talk about some things they need to do to fix this year. For their rushing yards per game, they gave up 134.8 yards rushing per game, which is slightly more than 2022 when they gave up about 124. And then total yards offensively, Boise State gave up 385.1 yards per game compared to 292.5 the previous year. And points-wise, Boise State gave up 25.6 points per game compared to 20.5 points the previous season. Hearing those statistics, and obviously the games that you guys were able to watch and take in from the sidelines or from your home studios there watching the games, what stood out to you from last year for Boise State?
They didn't have JL on defense.
That's right.
Man.
I think just the one thing I'll say real quick, I think starting 0-2, it's sometimes is a challenge in itself. Because then you got to get the one win, right? And then you win one, you're still not 500. Then you get to 500, then you lose one. So I think, we were always kind of playing from behind. And obviously, defense maybe needed to make some more plays. I think the offense in a couple of those games weren't quite scoring. So, sometimes, and JL can probably speak to this too, when your side's not doing as well, you kind of need the other side to step up and kind of get that momentum back. And I think early on in the season, there really wasn't clicking on both sides. Defense would do great one game, offense not so much. And vice versa. And I think that kind of, penalized the momentum there quite a bit early on, at least the first half of the year.
I think that early on in the year, it's a big transition from going from what we had the previous 2 years to last year. The year before, we had a very senior-heavy team. Basically, that whole team was full of seniors, I believe. All of us are pretty much older. Then from that to, I believe, having from that whole team, I think they had 3 starters from that year before still on that roster. So I think it was just a little bit of an adjustment period, especially in that first half for that defense. And then having to come out and play Michael Penix's first game, that's a challenge within itself. That guys, you got to give credit to where credit is due. So I think it was just, an adjustment period, having to really get those guys' confidence up and really just building confidence within themselves. I think that was a big thing as well, just gaining that confidence. Going 0-2, like you said, it can kind of, take a toll on you in a sense because you're like, man, what's not clicking for us? But, I think they picked it up for sure in the end, but it was just a little adjustment period for sure, just having to go from a different defense. Like there's a lot of young guys for sure, but next year is going to be a lot different for them. I could definitely say that.
Definitely a big difference between entering 2022 versus entering 2023. Entering 2022, really the only guy that you're losing is Kaniho. And then entering into 2023, you lose Matlock, Noah, Jones, yourself, Obituary, Biggers, Tyrese LaBeouf, George Tarlers, Banyard, Cravens. I mean, you lost 7 out of the 12 of the top tacklers on the team and 40% of the total defensive production coming into this year. So I think there should have been an expectation that there was going to be a drop-off. I think maybe people were a little surprised by how much, especially against the passing game, the drop-off was. But when you lose, and most of those guys I named, a lot of those guys were secondary players, especially losing yourself in the backfield of some other guys. It was hard to fill in. But Boise State still had some guys that stood out. Boise State still had some guys that stood out and had a great year, and I think are come into this season with a lot of momentum. Just going through a couple guys that stood out to me, and then you guys can talk about some guys yourselves. Was Alexander Tubner. He's filling in for you, JL, there, the boundary safety role. 85 tackles, led the team in tackles there from the boundary safety. 5 passes defended, an interception. I thought Shea Oladipo had an incredible year at nickel. I think that was his perfect spot. It's something I was advocating for him to go into actually in 2022 when Tyreek Jones took that role. But 70 tackles, second on the team, 4 passes defended. And I thought he had some of the cleanest wrap-ups of the year from that nickel spot. Really saved a lot of yards after carry or yards after catch. And then some other guys just real quick here. I thought Andrew Simpson, Marion McCoy, Ahmad Hassanin with 12.5 sacks, 91 sack yardage, negative 91 sack yardage there. And then Marco Notarainni. There's some other guys as well, and we'll talk about them when we get into the rest of the preview. But who stood out to you this year, and who do you think could potentially come in and have a really big season this year? And we'll start with you, JL.
I think everybody, I knew what everybody could do kind of in a sense when I was there. So I kind of had a little bit of a preview of what these guys were doing. But I'd say defensive side of the ball, that DB group is going to be real special this year. I feel like with Buck, Markel, Rodney, Shea, those guys, they got a good little mix of old and young. And, they have a good little mix of veterans within them, and Shea Oladipo surprised me a lot by this year. I'm proud of him. He just bossed up a little bit, especially in that nickel role. Buck, coming out as that freshman dude doing that. Those linebackers that we have are crazy. I already know that. Ahmed's gonna be Ahmed. So it's really just I'm not really surprised by anything that happened for those guys this year, to be honest with you, because I've seen them growing into that when I was at Boise State. So I'm just watching them flourish right now. I'm like, man, I already know you can. And they got so much more left in the tank, too. Like, they ain't even getting started. That's why I'm so excited for this year. Because if you think about it, was like little puppies coming out last year. Like, that was just their first time. That was their first time really, getting active for a whole season long. So now they got that behind their back, and they got a whole nother year. Oh, man, it's going to be crazy.
And, Hunter, how about you, especially from that linebacker perspective?
Yeah, I always say that's where I kind of look at things, or at least like to start there. So, obviously Simpson having a great year last year and being a younger guy, but now really being a veteran, right? So, and still having a lot of tenure left. So I'm excited for him to really kind of, take charge of that group, kind of lead the linebackers. Obviously, with a couple guys departing, there's going to be some room for a newcomer to come in and really add to that. But I'm excited. I think, kind of like JL said, last year guys were young. They're not young anymore, right? So yes, we're always going to need newcomers to come in and surprise us and step up and overachieve. But there's been a lot of play on the field now. So I think the defense, especially with having Collins come back and adding new safeties coach too, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and they're going to do it. So I'm excited.
I love that you focus on the youth last year versus coming in with that experience this season, because you're right. A lot of these guys, Simpson, he was a sophomore. Notarainni, I believe he was a sophomore as well. I believe Shea Oladipo was a sophomore. There's a lot of guys that just hadn't been the number one or hadn't even been in the program that long that's got thrust into a role and then stepped up really, really well. And so you're coming back from that experience into this year, especially with a full offseason to develop. I think that we're definitely going to see some improvements this year, and I'm excited for what they're able to do. However, there's also not just guys that are on this roster that are going to contribute. There's guys that they're bringing in as well. And so we're going to move into looking at just some of the newcomers that we're excited about that might be able to step up and have a big role this year. This is not going to be super in-depth going through every single player that Boise State brought in. This is just some of the guys that stood out to us. If you want to get a more in-depth breakdown of that, make sure you watch my 2024 signing class breakdown video. I went through every single player in the Boise State signing class and also included highlights from their huddle or from their YouTube or whatever throughout as well, with analysis and also some predictions about what they might be able to achieve here in the distant future or near future for Boise State. But for right now, just talking about some of the guys that excite us, I'll let you guys lead off with this. Is there anybody in either the transfer class or the high school recruit class here that excites you for this program this season?
I'll list 2 guys real quick. One, Troy Grizzle. My brother coached at Mountain View, so I know from when visiting, going to games, just, he's a dog. obviously a great wrestler too, so he's a tough kid. I know he just hurt his arm, but I'm excited for him. He's a preferred walk-on, but we know that Boise makes a killing on those local kids that are going to come in, earn their keep, right? Blue collar, he's got a lot to prove. So I'm really excited for him. And then Clay Matino from Oregon, multi-sport athlete, 4-star, absolute stud. So I think, getting a 4-star on defense too, just to kind of, hey, he's got big shoes to fill. But I'm excited for him to make an impact and sooner than later.
JL, how about you? Anybody that stands out to you in this recruiting class?
I like the way that Jeremiah Irby looked. I like the way that Udoka. I seen something about him on Twitter one time. I think I seen something on Twitter about him. There's a lot of offensive guys. They did a lot of work on the offensive guys. Lopez, I heard this guy's from England. I'm actually intrigued to see what he does. I don't know what how that works out, but he looks like he's pretty big. 6'3", 300. That's a lot of weight right there. So we're gonna see how he look. But yeah, I'm just gonna see, man. I'm really a DB guy. You know me. I just really focus on the DB. So I'm excited to see what Tevin and Jeremiah got for me. Let's see what they do for this little DB group for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited about some of those same guys. Lopez, like I said, guy from England. The last time that Boise State brought in a Nigerian-born guy from England, it was Jay Ajayi. So, Boise State's got a little bit of a track record there with some of these English guys coming in and playing at a high level. And he definitely, when you're coming from a different country that football is not a number one sport and you're still interested in it and you're still building yourself, it shows that you have that dedication. So I'm excited about him. I'm also excited about Clay. Like you mentioned, Hunter, got his star bumped up to 4 stars in the latest 24/7. I mean, that's crazy to have a guy that's going to a group of 5 program actually have his star level raised. You never see that. Usually if you see some guys being recruited by Power 5s and he goes to a group of 5, the bias factors out there, they actually drop the star level. Well, he actually got it raised. And that really shows where Boise State is right now and the level of expectations for this program. I like the DN, Trevor McKenna. He's a Bora guy from Boise, Idaho. 3-star, a little bit of a diamond in the rough, but I'm excited about what these local guys can come in and do. The transfer class really, really excites me. I think you guys have some guys on here that could come in and play right away as starters potentially, or at least building depth. Like you mentioned, the cornerback Jeremiah Irby out of Cal, he's had 61 tackles in the last 2 years, 17 passes defended and 2 interceptions there at California. Edge Tavarian Woodard, 6'4", 265, transfer from Ball State. He's got a year left. He's had 75 tackles over 4 years and 10.5 sacks. I think they're probably bringing him in to replace Dimitri Washington there. I think that's where you're going to see him fill in. And you don't usually bring a guy in who's a player already at the FBS level with 1 year left unless you expect him to play right away. And then the edge, Joseph Marsh, 6'3", 225 JUCO product. Last year at the JUCO level, so it is JUCO competition, but still 15.5 tackles for loss and 7 sacks. He reminds me a little bit of Jabril Frazier, a little bit of a similar build, a little bit of a similar play style. I'm excited about what he can potentially do. JL, you had some guys that came in while you were at Boise State that were transfers that played right away. Caleb Biggers from Bowling Green came in, and he contributed right off the bat. I know this is not your experience because you were a 4-year guy at Boise State, but can you talk a little bit about just what that challenge is like to come in as a transfer or a freshman and to play right away and what that challenge is like?
It's basically you got to speed up your process a lot. Coming in as a guy, you kind of have to play. Your process speeds up a lot. It's not like you're a freshman coming in, you have time to develop. Like, you kind of need to be developed now and learn the playbook now and learn the techniques now and learn everything and gel with guys kind of faster. So, I mean, it all happens naturally, though, as you play the game. You're a football player at the end of the day and you're a person. So it will be kind of faster in a sense, but you don't really have to necessarily stress yourself out too much about it because especially at Boise State, we did a good job of helping guys out. Like, they're not just going to leave you out to dry. Nobody does that. They'll make sure that you are up to speed on everything. So I think it's a pretty good transition for usually when guys come in to have to do that, especially at Boise State. I've heard they've always had a smooth little transition.
Hunter, do you have any thoughts on this? You had a classmate, JUCO transfer in Winston Venable, and he's the guy who came in last year and did the defensive preview with me last season. So you got to see some of these guys come in from the JUCO level or from the FBS level and contribute right away. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges those guys faced and how they kind of presented themselves in the locker room when they're experienced guys, but not at Boise State, and just kind of how they established themselves in the program?
Yeah. And, I think one thing too, and obviously Tyrone Crawford was another one who, drafted, played 9 years in the NFL, JUCO guy. So I think it elevates the people that are already on the team because, hey, there's talent coming in. So, you got to take it another step. You want to get on the field, you got to compete. I mean, Winston came in and within 3 months, and he's a different breed. I know JL knows that too. I mean, he was literally a captain, right? I mean, think about that. Coming as a JUCO guy, we've been there 3-4 years. He comes in. Not only is he kind of the defensive player of the year for the conference, but he's like making us do extra Bronx shows in the summertime. He was just a different guy. So, no, I think it's important. I think early on there wasn't really a big part of that, right? Hey, we got great recruiting classes. We don't need JUCO guys, but you never want to be behind, right, in the conference. So, and there's a lot of JUCO talent out there. So if you can win on a few of those, they can come in and play right away. It's great, especially on the defensive side. Some of those bigger boys, they've got a little more weight under them, right? So I think that's a great thing.
Well, moving on to the 2024 defensive preview itself and looking at what this defense is facing, they lose 3 of their top tacklers from last year, so not as big of a drop-off as last season. Last season, they lose 7 out of 12, 40% of their total production tackle-wise. But this year, most of their guys are back. I mean, they lose DJ Schramm and Dimitri Washington, and those guys were captains on the defense. So that's a lot of leadership gone. But they're also guys that had to deal with quite a few injuries throughout their time at Boise State, or especially DJ Schramm last year. And so new guys had to step up and to feel that experience. And so Boise State is returning a lot of experience across the board. They lose, like I said, DJ Strand, Dimitri Washington, and then Jalen Clark to some off-field stuff. But they have a lot of guys coming back in almost every key position that have the experience and depth at that experience. Not just the starters, but you saw a lot of guys rotating in and out. And that was actually my key to the season last year, was for Boise State to know that they were going to take a little bit of a drop off defensively and build for the future. 2023, you probably wasn't going to be the year you were going to make a run for the New Year's Six, but the next year, 2024, that's when the playoffs were on the line. Build depth for 2024. And Boise State definitely did that. They got a lot of guys experienced throughout the year. So looking at this defense overall, they brought in a new defensive coordinator because Spencer Danielson has been elevated to the head coaching job. So Eric Schnander, who's been the defensive line coach at Boise State, will maintain that role. He is now going to be the defensive coordinator for Boise State. He's a former DC himself. He was a defensive coordinator at UCF and at Nebraska. When at Nebraska in 2021, they were 36 nationally in scoring defense with only 22.7 points per game allowed. So that would be better than last season's 25.6 points allowed. And then during his time at UCF was ranked second nationally in turnovers. So Boise State, a little bit of a drop-off picks-wise last year, maybe being able to bump up those turnover numbers this season. Let's talk a little bit about Spencer Danielson being elevated to the head coaching job. JL, that was your defensive coordinator. And Boise State, obviously, they parted ways with Andy Avalos, and there was a lot of different candidates out there, both inside the tree and outside of the brotherhood and family, that they were looking at for potential guys. And it was a long, thorough, in-depth coaching search that the players on the team, their thoughts and positions were allowed to be part of that consideration. And at the end of the day, the guy that they wanted, Spencer Danielson, ended up getting elevated. What are your thoughts on your old DC taking over the head coaching reins?
I love it. That's why I wanted to be the head coach the whole time. Honestly, when that little searching thing happened, I knew it was either going to be Coach D or they was going to lose a lot of them players. So that's really what it came down to. I would have been upset if it wasn't Coach D, and I know a lot of guys on the team would have been upset if it wasn't Coach D as well. So I think it's a great hire by Jeremiah Dickey, and I just love everything that he's doing over there at Boise State and the way that he's just elevating us every year, continuing to elevate us. And Coach D's a great hire. I love Coach D. That's a special guy to me, and yeah, I'm excited for him for sure.
Now, Hunter, I know you had a lot of thoughts on the previous head coach. We're not necessarily going to go into those right now, but you're an opinionated guy, and you had a lot of thoughts on the head coaching search and job. So what are your thoughts on Spencer Danielson taking over this role?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously it was no, hidden surprise to you that, I was kind of vocal for Choate, who took the Nevada job, right? He was my coach at Boise back in the day. But at the end of the day, kind of like JL said, I mean, Dickey made the right choice. I think when you have a locker room, you don't want to lose that. And I think everyone was gung-ho, and obviously just from him as a personality, he's young, he's charismatic, he's a ball buster, but he's a player's coach. And I think that's so important nowadays. And that's why some of these older coaches, I think, are kind of getting out or retiring. It's just because it's a different game nowadays. And I think, Coach D still has his pulse on it. I'm fired up. I think everything he's done since he's taken over has been a step forward. I think Bronco Nation's fired up. Obviously, JL said, the locker room loves him. And just seeing social media and how excited they are when he was named. I mean, how can you not be excited? How can you not think that's the right choice? So, and obviously we got to win games in the fall, but, it was a good preview last year when he kind of just, took over and we won 4 straight, right? It's a good start. Obviously we want to keep things going, but I'm fired up. I think it was definitely a good hire. Great hire.
Yeah, I'll admit, and I said it in my reaction video to Spencer Danielson being hired, that he wasn't the number one guy that I was considering. I was on the Kellen Moore potential train hype part of that, and I don't know if that was even realistic.
That ship sailed.
Yeah. But once he got brought in, I very quickly identified that this was the right hire for Boise State. And that has been very, we haven't played a game yet in 2024 season, but he has won so many times already on the field with the recruiting class that he has just brought in. The highest rated Boise State history. The players that he was able to convince to stay and part of this roster, being able, like I said, it's a new era of college football. You're having to recruit the guys on your roster in addition to bringing guys in. And Ashton Genty sticking around is going to be so huge for this program. And then, just the reaction of the players and what they were able to do to turn that season around. 2023 was headed for the worst program record in Boise State history since 1997, and they turned that around and won the Mountain West Championship out of nowhere. Got a little help by some other top teams losing along the way, but they did it. They went undefeated on the back end after Spencer Danielson took over up into the bowl game, and they won the Mountain West. So there's a lot of excitement about him at that head coaching role. But what kind of impact do you think that he will still have on the defense? JL, can you talk to this a little bit? This is the second time in a row that Boise State's had a defensive coordinator type guy, a defensive focused coach as their head coach. What kind of role did Andy Avalos have with the defense as a defensive minded guy? And do you expect Spencer Danielson to have a similar or different role now that he's the head coach?
As defensive head coach, you're always going to have a little say in the defensive game plan in a sense. So I feel like Coach D necessarily would. I feel like he'll chip in on what he thinks will be a good key point for the game plan, etc. But I feel like he'll also let the DC have his little bit of control as well in the things that he want to do. Because Coach D, there's a lot of things that Coach D has to worry about now. It's not just defense anymore. He has to worry about offense. He has to worry about time, situations, down and distance. He has to worry about a lot more things now. Just can't be focused on mainly defense. So I feel like he'll still chip in a little bit, but he'll also let the DC who he brought in, who I assume he trusts very well, because it's a very big defense for us. Like, defense is something very special to Boise State. So I assume he trusts him and let him do the things that he does, and kind of be a head coach in a sense, for sure.
When he was a defensive coordinator, did he have a tendency to kind of let the position coaches run their own show and he would contribute with his thoughts and kind of help guide and traject, or was he pretty hands-on with that side of things?
Sure, I don't really know, man. I don't really know in the sense of how their meetings went and such like that. I know that Coach D is a coach that, values everyone's opinion. So even he'll take it into account what we thought sometimes as players. Like, man, we don't see it this way. We trying to do it this way. Because if we see it a certain way, it'll be better for us to play it. So, Coach D has been a person that always, appreciates everyone's opinion. He's a player's first coach, so he's going to sit right there and talk to you, sit right there with the position coach and talk to you and see, what you guys like best and what you want to play. So, I remember a couple of times Coach D was sitting in a meeting with us DBs. He'll bring the linebackers in. We'll sit there and talk about it, like, hey, how do you guys see this? And figure out how we're going to game plan it. So having that type of coach is very nice, because it's just like a big, I'll say, conversation at that point. It's not even getting drilled to do his thing a certain way. It's a conversation, and, he agrees that we may see it different than him sometimes. So it's pretty nice having a coach like that.
And JL knows, too, how fast you can play when you're comfortable and you know that, hey, they got their back, and, hey, I want to do something different. Go for it, right? Hey, I trust you. That's a good gel. That's what you want.
Yeah. Once Coach D is he gonna trust you, man. Like, it was a couple times during the years, fans don't notice, but I did some stuff rogue on my own sometimes. And Coach D just let me do it because he trusts me and it worked. And he like, man, I just trust you. Like, that's just, you got to build that trust with him. So that's one thing I love about Coach D. Now, don't go out there doing your job wrong all the time. Like, no, but if you just feel it one time, one little intuition, you do it, it's all right, and it worked, and he gonna trust you and ride out with it. So that's why I love Coach D. I mean, it's a great thing to be with him, and it's just special for sure.
Well, it sounds like Spencer Danielson is going to do a great job as a head coach, and I know the players are excited about him and what he is going to bring to this program. And then Eric Shenander's a very experienced guy with his time at UCF, Nebraska, and then those two working together on the defense, there should be a lot of things that get improved. But one of those things that maybe needs to get improved a little bit is that pass rush for Boise State. They have an absolute monster on the defensive line in Ahmad Hassanin, who is stepping up to be that highlight guy, that DeMarcus Lawrence, that Tyrone Crawford, that Weaver, that Wheeler, that whoever you want to call it. He is stepping up to be that face of the defense for Boise State. And however, around him, there was a little bit of lack of outside pressure for Boise State against the quarterback in general. The sack numbers did go up a little bit, but they were also playing some teams that had a little bit more of a pass-heavy focus versus that run. On the defensive line, only 3 other players recorded a full sack now for Boise State, and one of those guys is gone, Dimitri Washington. So they were still jumping up with the sacks, but most of those sacks were coming from the secondary, were coming from the linebacker group. The defensive line, apart from Ahmad Hassanin, you didn't have a lot of edge guys coming in and making pressure in the backfield. So who is going to step up with him, do you think, on this roster, or maybe some of the guys that are coming in? That's a big question for the defense this year, is who's going to step up with Ahmad Hassanin and increase that pressure on the quarterback this year. I'll throw out some names and we can talk about them. Some potential guys that are on the roster already. Jaden Version, he's a guy that he had stepped up as a young guy last year, 23 tackles, playing in limited playing time. I thought we saw a lot of potential out of him from the defensive end. Braxton Feely, he had 3 sacks from the defensive tackle. I liked what both Newton and Gums were able to do from the nose tackle position. And then defensive end, Tyler Weegis, he's a transfer last year, didn't see much playing time, only 1 tackle, but he's a guy with some strong potential. And then some of the new guys, Boise State brought in 6 new defensive linemen this year, including a couple guys like Marsh and Woodyard, who I think are going to contribute right away. Who do you guys see stepping up to fill that role with Ahmad Hassanin this year? Do you think it'll be someone that's already on the roster or one of these new guys that are coming in?
Oh, the one thing I will say too, because obviously JL, still knows a few of these guys, so I'll let him talk on that. But, defensive scheme, if you can get pressure without blitzing, it makes everything so much easier for the DBs, for everybody, right? Just scheming for the defensive coaches. So, obviously having one absolute stud get pressure is great, but if they can really get a second guy in the mix there, obviously then you can get really creative in the blitz game. But I'm hoping one of these JC guys comes in and really shocks people. But I'll kind of let JL talk about the current roster too, because I know he knows those guys. But I'm excited. We know we got one absolute stud. We need a second one to really kind of close some puzzle pieces, but I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a great year, especially with kind of movement of coaches too.
I think everybody. We got Tavion. That's one guy I assume will come in and do some things. And then they could just really going back on the D-line right now. I think it was really the problem with the D-line last year was they didn't have much experience with the pass rushing, etc. Like Jaden Version, he's going to come back way different. Ahmed's going to be Ahmed. Herb, Shelton Newton. You know his name, Shelton Newton?
Yep.
He was his first year last year as well. Like those guys all just got to get a little bit more experience underneath them. And I think with the D-line coach we got now, Jabril, they got this whole spring to really work on some pass rush moves and doing all those things. I think it's going to be perfectly fine next year because at the end of the day, they're going to have to double team Ahmed. And they know that, and everybody else knows that. So at the end of the day, it's going to be somebody has a one-on-one. You better win that one-on-one. Win the one-on-one. Somebody has it, you better find it and win that one-on-one because they're going to have to double Ahmed. At that point in time, it's great to have that. So then at that point, when you got somebody like Ahmed taking those double teams, those other guys, we looking at you like, you better go eat, man. Because there's 2 people taking up, or there's one person taking up 2 people, and there's one-on-ones just across the board. So y'all gonna have some fun. Somebody, a running back gonna have to block a D-end at one point. Like, come on now. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So it just takes that development, it takes that time. D-line, it's a lot of hand movement up there up front, man. There's a lot of hand fighting for those big boys. So you got to really learn that technique and learn it and be diligent with it. So I feel like them dedicating that time right now is going to be good for them. And yeah, I just feel like all those guys are going to step up, especially Verge. Verge off that edge. He started getting a little bit more comfortable towards the end of the year. I'm just excited to see him just develop a little bit more. And that interior D-line is going to be very special. I can feel it. So, especially with Braxton Feely and those guys really getting their feet underneath them, is going to be very special for sure.
I absolutely agree. I think that the experience level coming back is going to be a huge push to helping Boise State bolster that defensive line. Also, though, it also comes down to the depth, with the definitely gone after in the recruiting cycle. Like I said, 6 different defensive line guys brought in. Some of the guys we haven't even mentioned yet. I mean, like Hayden Hanks coming in, 6'4", 270. You know, looking at his tape, he's a guy that's jumped around between a couple of different programs, and at the JUCO level, he was at Montana and Montana State before coming over here to Boise State. So this is a guy that he reminds me of Tyrone Crawford. You know, he got a similar build, 6'4", 290 there at the defensive line. I think he could potentially come in and, you know, not replace any of the starters, but build some depth there as well. So it's going to be, I think, a fresher defensive line with some moving pieces, and then also a level of experience. But just talking a little bit about that struggle, you already kind of addressed it a little bit. But do you think the biggest issue for Boise State in getting consistent quarterback pressure this year, do you think that it was an issue of personnel, or do you think it was more of an issue of scheme overall for Boise State?
You know, I'll say a little bit of both, not to point one of it on you know, either the players or the coaches, but you know, there's a lot of things that goes into it too. And I like that you mentioned fresh too, because, you know, long drives, being able to get other guys in that have fresh legs that can rush on the same level makes the world of a difference too. You know, if you're having to kind of keep, you know, your guys in and they're tired, you know, you're not going to get quite as much out of them. But I think being able to have other guys step up is going to be huge. We always know it always starts in the trenches, works its way back. I always know my job was a lot easier because I had great D linemen in front of me, right? So, I mean, from a backer standpoint, if you know they're going to do their job and they're going to do it well, you can play faster. And then it goes back to the DB, same thing. They got to trust the backers in front of them too. So I think it's a little bit of everything. But having more, you know, play time, you know, having these guys that have played 14 games now, that's huge. So I think it's gonna be exciting.
Well, Boise State last year, they, like I said, had a very inexperienced roster coming back. They had to fill in some different positions. And Boise State overall didn't seem to be as blitz focused last year, at least until Spencer Danielson took over at the head coach. That first game back with him at the head coach, I mentioned it on Twitter, and BJ Areens, I agreed that Boise State seemed to bring a little bit more of a blitz focus there. Do you think that we will see more of a blitz focus from Boise State defensively, scheme-wise, this year? Or do you think that they'll try to bring a little bit more of that just 3 or 4 man pressure and hope that the new guys that are coming in and the experience that they're bringing back are enough to put pressure on the quarterback? Let JL, you can lead off.
I can't spill Coach D sauce, but I know
you're good.
I can't talk about Coach D methods, but I know Coach D very well. It's gonna be a fun year. It's gonna be a fun year. That's all we got to say about it. That's all I got to say. It's gonna be a fun year for sure. I know Coach D very well. You know, I done built some of them blitzes with him. You know, I done sat in the room and seen him, like him just drawing up stuff. So, I don't know how you gonna be, man. It's gonna be interesting to see, but I know it's gonna be a lot of fun this year. So it's gonna be nice to watch for sure.
Well, that is a great answer, and yeah, I don't want you spilling any trade secrets that will put us on a back footing there. But I'm excited for what Spencer Danielson will take over as the head coach with full authority to run the team his way. There's some new faces that are going to be coming in. There's going to be some guys coming back with better experience. I think overall we will see an increase in that pressure on the quarterback and improvement across the line.
I think so as well. I think, and I'm gonna say one more thing as well. Don't base it off the spring game. Please do not do that. I hate it when people just get assumptions off of the spring games, man. It's a spring game. Don't get too just let the spring game be. But don't think too much about it for sure.
Yeah, that spring game's going to be exciting. I know, Hunter, you're coming down for that, right? You're going to come up. You were trying to organize a contingent of the Brotherhood to come watch that game. It's going to be an exciting one. We didn't really address that. I guess we can do that now since it's been brought up. Do you have any expectations for the spring game, Hunter? That excitement that some guys are excited to watch down there on the field? Just talk a little bit about that trip.
You know, I'm glad JL said that because spring game's interesting. They try a lot of stuff, right? You're doing different things. Guys are, I don't want to say in different positions. We know what guys are playing, but it's not always a real, answer of what you're going to see. Fall camp's really where things really get ironed out.
Yeah.
Things always kind of rises. So I'm excited. I'm just excited to get back on the blue and, just see some people hit each other. This is always kind of the lull now. So, it's a long time until fall season starts. But no, I'm excited. I think especially, I know this isn't an offense, but having DK out there too, it's going to be flying. So both sides of the ball.
What would you describe as the purpose of the spring game? Obviously it's not the full playbook. Obviously it's not a full stadium. Obviously you're not putting guys, your number one starters out there to go out and play, in a way that's going to get people hurt. So what exactly would you say the purpose of the spring game? Is it really just a way of hyping up the fan base, an exhibition for the fans, or is there something the players and coaches are really getting out of that?
I always love to say, show me you can compete in April. It's a long ways away from season. You got summer workouts, you got fall camp, but this is year round. And I do think it's fun for the fans. I think it's, Bronco Nation loves it, loves coming to the game, loves supporting it. But from a player standpoint, and, I think it's compete, get reps, right? How many reps can we get? We can't get enough reps. Perfect your craft, but really it's just competing.
Yeah, it's a game, and they don't want to lose. So yeah, I remember when we played it, we took it pretty serious. We wasn't just out there trying to just, the starters get set down at a certain point in time, but we trying to win that game too. Because at the end of the day, you either eating steak or eating hot dogs. So you choose whichever one you want to eat.
Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, that's it. Every year you better eat. If you lose, eating hot dogs. You win, you get a nice little steak and all that. So yeah.
My junior year, we did a draft. We actually drafted two different sides.
It's usually offense versus defense. So offense versus defense, whoever win, you win, you get that steak. You lose, you get that hot dog.
I love that. I love that.
Well, talking about that locker room environment and talking about those guys stepping up and competing and being leaders on the team, Boise State's got to replace a couple of key leaders. Replace a couple of team captains, Dimitri Washington, and obviously the big one there is the loss of Schramm, who kind of took over. He had that huge year in 2022, and then came into 2023, and he was a major leader on the field there, and obviously had some injuries sidelined him, but he still remained a leader on this team. So who steps up as that on-the-field emotional leader for this program now that Schramm has left?
Basically, I'm saying all the older guys on that team, that's going to be the ones that have to do that. I'm going to be honest with you. So we're going to have to go with Drew. He's going to have to step up and be a leader. Marco going to have to step up and be a leader. Ahmed's going to have to step up and be a leader. Shea going to have to step up and be a leader. Markel's already been that. Rodney going to have to step up and be a leader. Because at the end of the day, they're going to have a lot of young guys on that defense as well. So those guys who are the older in that group, they're all going to have to step up and be those leadership guys in that role that DJ Schramm was. Because, DJ Schramm was also older than them by a little bit as well. So now they're kind of all in the same age group. They have to kind of lead together, I say, and really transfer. They can do something that's very special here pretty soon if they wanted to. They can go back to back to back. Yeah, 3 times in a row if they wanted to. After this season, if they all stayed collective and did it again. So, they have something very special to build. And, I could see it being done for sure with those guys, and they just continue to grow and lead. So, yeah, I think that they got a good little group of leadership on that team for sure. Those guys will step up for sure and handle what they need to be handled. But, like I said, man, being in that championship this year, I think is going to do them a lot of justice because they've been through it before. Everybody on that starting defense, everybody that started offense already won a championship. So once you get that feeling, you know what that feels like and what needs to be done. So at that point in time, yeah, it's contagious. They're just going to want to – they know what that feels like. They don't want to ever have that feeling of losing again because they lost one with me as well. So they know the feeling of both of it. So I think that feeling of winning it, I think they know what that feels like and they're just addicted to it now. And I'm excited to see it for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that, Hunter? Obviously there were some good teams before you guys got there. The 2016 goes and does put Boise State on the map with the Fiesta Bowl. But 2007 was a little bit of a down year. Boise State goes 10-3 that year. They lose out on a chance at the Sugar Bowl with a loss to Hawaii. But then 2008, you guys come in. Boise State goes undefeated, goes to the Poinsettia Bowl, almost wins that game, and then 2009 goes and wins the Fiesta Bowl. Can you talk a little bit about that contagious winning, infectious winning feeling, how that really transformed your locker room and your team into creating the 15-3 roster that ended up being the final result?
Yeah, I know we've kind of said it's cliche, but, winning is contagious, but it's like, you hate losing more than you love winning. You don't want to lose. And once you've had that, okay, hey, we won a championship, but we really want what's next. We want the bigger one. We want the Fiesta. We want the Fiesta Bowl again. And, obviously going into that 2010 year after the Fiesta Bowl, honestly, we were a better team. We had everybody back. We had 10 starters on both sides of the ball back after a 14-0 year. We started the season number 3 and beat V-Tech, Tyrod Taylor. So every game you're getting everyone's best game. I not to knock anyone in the conference, but every team that Boise plays, Boise's on their calendar. They want to beat Boise. They're not saying that for New Mexico or Nevada or other schools, right? So you are getting everyone. When you're ranked and you're higher and they hate you, but that makes it more. That fuels you more of, hey, we don't want to lose. We want to kick the crap out of this team every week. So it's contagious. And I think when Coach D took over, you could kind of see that. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. This is what the Broncos standard is. Let's rattle off a few wins in a row. That's momentum. So, and I think the guys, kind of like JL said, they know that they can do it. So that's half the battle.
One line before we move on to the secondary, and it's been a really good in-depth discussion of the defensive line, the front seven here for Boise State. But one last guy I want to talk about, because I'm personally super excited about him, and I want to get your thoughts, is Marco Notarainni. I thought that guy just exploded last year, filling in for DJ Schramm after the injuries. A guy that really didn't have any experience playing much before 2023. After the injuries, he came in, had 53 tackles, 3 sacks, a pass defended, a forced fumble. He's 6'3". He's 235 pounds. Like I said, 2022, he had 2 tackles. And 2023, he comes in, has 6 tackles versus UCF. He had multiple games where he had 10-plus tackles. He just exploded last year. What did you guys see out of him? And are you expecting another huge year out of him this season? Do you think he could be that future star NFL discussion type guy for Boise State?
I just want to say he's from San Diego. How those San Diego products get. I already knew how Marco was going to be when he first got there. I see Marco play with us. I think Marco got hurt the 2022 year, I believe, though, or something like that.
Okay.
Or maybe it was last year that he got hurt. He got hurt at one point in time, but Marco is a dog, man. Marco's going to be very good for that team. I'm excited for him. I seen Marco play when he was there with me. He was doing some crazy things. So him just having that year, like I said, man, I'm excited for this year because they got a whole bunch of experience. All those guys just got their first year done. And this is just year 2 for them, like being as a full group gelling together, even though they got some of the young freshmen in too. Like, so, having those guys get that feet wet early, I'm just excited for him for sure. And Marco's going to be a dog. He's going to be one of the good ones in Boise State for sure. Him and Andrew Simpson could probably go first team.
Oh, yeah. I think that this Boise State linebacker core really, really excites me. I think they've built a little bit of depth there because it was a little bit of a shallow unit last year, but they built some good depth, and then they brought in some great guys to the defensive line. So this front seven for Boise State, I think, is going to be solid. I think the questions that were asked of them last year, I think are going to get solid answers for this season. I think they're going to increase that pressure, and I think we're going to see really an incredible linebacker core for Boise State. Maybe one of the best we've seen in recent years for Boise State coming out of this linebacker core. But the biggest question for this Boise State defense overall, it's not the defensive line wasn't the best Boise State's ever had, but it was pretty good overall, and the linebacker core was great last year too. But the big question that Boise State fans were asking, and that caught a lot of that negative flack, was the secondary. But I do want to put it into perspective before we talk about it, because in 2023, Boise State was in a major defensive rebuild. We've already talked about that. 40% of the defensive production gone, 7 out of 12 tackles. Most of those guys were in the secondary. Jones, LaBeouf, Biggers, yourself. I mean, that's 4 major starters, major tone setters on the defense, especially you and Tyreek Jones. I mean, you guys like some of the biggest hits I've ever seen at Boise State. So especially when you started getting into the targeting trouble, it seemed like Tyreek Jones took over a little bit and kind of helped draw a little bit of that tension away. I mean, you guys were just a great combo there in the nickel and the safety position together. So, you lose guys like that. It's a secondary that's especially a hard hit, but then a ton of first-time guys step up and have a huge year. Some of the guys that we were talking about that stood out to us, Tubner, McCoy, Ty Benefield, which you didn't even mention, who's one of the fastest guys on the team, Zion Washington, Clark, those guys step up and have a huge season as new guys, and now they're coming back with experience. Nearly every one of the players that made an impact last year and that stayed healthy throughout the whole season are back with a lot of depth and experience across the board for 2023. I think that this, for 2024, I think that this is going to be a massively improved secondary. So before we talk about some of the negatives and the questions, I want to put it in the perspective, because I'm fighting this Twitter war all the time with fans that are just such major naysayers. And
I don't want to get on Twitter with me, man.
Yeah.
They need to come talk to me.
I'll send them your way.
Send them my way.
No, it's okay to point out negatives. It's okay to point out downsides. That's part of being an analyst. That's part of being a fan, is talking about things you want to see improved. And we're doing that in this video. We're talking about things that need to get better. But you also have to identify and recognize the situation that those statistics were produced in, that the environment that those players were in. To put such brand new guys, such young guys out on the field, and to see what they were able to do with little experience coming in was very, very heartening coming into this year. And so Boise State's got questions. They've got the secondary that needs to improve, but to whine and moan about it like it's something that's not going to be fixed is not the right way forward. So we're going to talk about what Boise State needs to fix this. But before we do, I wanted to put it into the perspective of, you guys need to chill a little bit on talking about this. I'm bad-mouthing this Boise State secondary, because they went out there, and for young guys to put into a tough position with a lot of other stuff going on in the locker room and everything else that ended up happening that season, those guys went out and fought every single day and played exceptionally for the environment that they were in. And they're all coming back. And I think it's not going to be the same guys. It's going to be guys that are now experience level, and they're going to improve on what they did last year. And I think that the secondary is going to be much better. So before we talk about it, I just wanted to put that out there at the beginning.
Yeah, I think the fans last year forgot that JL had graduated. He was in the league.
Yeah, it's
DB is the hardest position in college football.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the hardest position in football, man. It's one of the hardest ones, because, at the end of the day, you can look good one play and then look terrible the next. So it's like, those guys, I was even watching them, man. I know some of those guys. I know I played with them. They were just sometimes beating themselves in a sense. The first time being in that element, being in those situations, those atmospheres, I could see them just sometimes get into them. And it's mental games happen sometimes. Mental mess ups happen. So no, I think that them having that experience last year is going to just only help them so much more this year, because we had so many young guys going out there for the first time. Tubner went out there first game in Washington. Rodney Robertson out there first game in Washington. Marion McCoy first game in college football, Washington. Jayla Debo first time starting a big game, Washington. Boom. Who else do we have out there? Ty Buck Benefield first game, Washington. Boom. JC first game, Washington. Boom. So most of those guys on that secondary last year had never had a big game where they started and they were the tone setters that first play of the game. Most of those guys never had that experience, because it was me, Tyree Jones, Ken Kala, Kaniho. So and
UW's a demoralizing first game to have.
And UW is one of the best teams in the nation and went to the college playoffs. So, I mean, what are we really doing here, man? So that's why even when things happen like that, they picked it up at the end of the year. They picked it up. They started picking it up, and it's also just understanding, knowledge of the game. And they think DB, especially playing that safety position, you have to have a lot of knowledge in this game. And them having that year to just learn, see it in person, see it firsthand in the game experience, stuff like that. Oh, I'm not worried about it this year. I could see him going back to the top 15 like we were when I was there. I could see him going back to the years that how that DB standard is. So I'm not worried about him at all. They have a great, good mix of guys there. So I'm not worried at all. And I think it's going to be a good DB group for sure.
Yeah, 250.4 passing yards per game, but they had to play a quarterback who passed for almost 5,000 yards. They had to play another quarterback from Memphis who passed for almost 4,000 yards, and they don't have to do that this year. I mean, they have to play. They have to play Oregon second game out the bat, and that will be tough. They're bringing over a transfer from Oklahoma, so Dylan Gabriel, he's going to be a tough guy, but he's not going to be Michael Penix. So you're going to have the not as quite as tough a passing teams to face this year, in addition to improvements overall. But the big question this year, and we'll talk about it, is how does Boise State fix its coverage issues? Do you think that last year's problems were primarily personnel, just inexperience, or do you think there are some schematic things that Boise State needs to do differently this year? And I'll put this out to the audience on which one you guys want to talk about.
So I'll just say too, and I kind of mentioned earlier, it makes having the players, and I think we have the players. We know that, right? Now they're better, so we're going to expect a little bit more. But more pressure on the QB makes the DB's job a lot easier, right? You're not on an island forever, right? You can get more creative in your blitzes, but also too, you don't have to blitz every play to get pressure, right? If you can get pressure with 4, you can sit back and really make some big plays on defense. So I think it's every unit needs to kind of improve a little bit. I wouldn't say it's all on the DBs. I know to the fans, sometimes they see that, right? A missed tackle in the secondary is, oh my gosh, our DBs. But, it's 11 guys doing the right thing every play. And, if they don't, it's not going to work. So, I won't put it all on the DBs. I think obviously there's improvements there, but there's a lot of, like I said, game time and jails kind of alluded to a couple of times. A little more chips on their shoulder this year, right? They know what's in front of them, and they've got a little more playing time, a little more onus, right? Hey, I want to be a captain. I want to be a leader. I'm not a sophomore anymore. I'm not a junior anymore. I'm a senior. So how do you want to go out? So I'm excited.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we saw that last year. Boise State, they lost so many guys, but the defense they ran seemed to be pretty similar to the one they'd ran the year before, and they had experienced guys at those positions. And so I think that part of the issues was a little bit schematic in that they had inexperienced guys, and instead of maybe reverting to a little bit more of a pressure-focused defense to take some time off of those DBs so they're not having to guard their guys for 5-7 seconds, put a little bit more pressure on the quarterback, put some guys out on islands, but also force the quarterback into some mistakes. I think that might have been the way to go versus kind of running a little bit, pretty much a similar scheme, still trying to focus on, a 3 or 4 man pressure most of the time, and then focusing mostly on a coverage-based defense. Last year caused problems. That is not going to be the case this year because those guys are now going to be experienced. So you can do what you did last year, and you're going to have a completely different result.
Yeah, and I'll joke real quick, but if DK puts 45 on the board every game, it makes the defense job a lot easier. So
that's right.
No, I think we're excited. Both sides of the ball are going to, big improvements. I'm really excited for the defense. Just being a defensive guy, I'm always kind of watching that a little more closely than the offense. But all starts up front, works its way back, and I think everyone's going to do what they're supposed to do this year, and it's going to be a better fit on the field.
I agree with that 100%. I expect Boise State this year to run a similar defensive scheme to what they did last year. I think that they will tend to be a little bit more blitz heavy, like we saw when Spencer Danielson took over after Andy Avalos, a little bit more creative in their blitz schemes. But I think they will also see guys stepping up with that experience from this last season and being able to fill those coverage roles and not having as many breaks or mental miscues as we saw last year. So I'm excited about that. But part of the improvements overall for the defense are going to be kind of solidifying a couple of those positions. And one of the questions that is at contention right now is who's going to be at that free safety spot. Boise State tried out a lot of different guys at free safety last year. You had Rodney Robinson, who saw playing time there. You saw Ty Benesville. You saw Zion Washington there last year quite a bit. So who do you think is going to be fulfilling that starting role for Boise State at the free safety position? Who do you see taking over on that role?
I don't know. I think it's still gonna be Rodney Robinson. Buck, he's a solid guy. He's a solid young guy. So he's gonna push Rodney, make sure Rodney's at the best that he can be. By the end of the day, you gotta compete, man. So I don't know. That's just up to Coach D, and who he feels the moment is handling that position the best. But I know that he's going to allow them to compete, allow them to fight it out, and allow them to battle it out. So I think Rodney has it just because of the experience-wise, seniority-wise, but we'll see how everything goes. I play with Rodney as well, so I know what he can do. He knows he has more in the tank. I've seen Rodney play better than what he did last year. So I even told him that I put that year past him. So I'm excited to see what he does this offseason, how he's grown, especially the spring ball run, see how he developed into. And, I'm excited for sure.
And one thing, too, I think it's really hard sometimes when you have a guy that you're not sure how he's going to pan out and there might not be any depth behind him because it's kind of like, well, we'll see what he does. When you got guys that we know there's multiple talented players at one position, whoever ends up starting is going to be the guy. And next man up, right? If injuries happen, when you have depth, it makes the coaches feel a little bit better, but also too, just the unit, like, hey, I want to compete. If you're the only good player and you're kind of just good with no one behind you, I'm not saying, you take your foot off the gas, but I think, competitiveness and competition breeds excellence. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Rodney Robinson, even though he drew a little bit of some fan criticism, he still had a good year. 61 tackles, 2 passes defended. He had an interception overall. Overall, it was a pretty solid year. He gave up some opportunities here and there, but also it was a Boise State defense that was the secondary specifically that was going through some issues overall. And so you had guys getting put in positions that maybe they shouldn't, with quarterbacks holding onto the ball a little bit longer than they would have otherwise with a better pressure system. So yeah, there's no denying the speed that Benesfield brings. He's at one point, right after the UCF game, when I was touring the stadium, he was on one of the top fastest guys with a 22.29 miles per hour run. So, there's no denying the speed from Benesfield, and I expect that we'll see him contributing this year. But I do see Rodney Robinson coming back and having a better year and using that experience learned and that leadership to help inspire the team. But the big question mark this year is actually at corner. Because Boise State's got a lot of depth there. That's really great. You talk about having a lot of depth, but you also have a lot of guys that could all be starters. You got guys that are coming in, like Irby from California, that you expect to contribute. But then you got guys already on this roster, like Amari McCoy, who was one of the best last year. I think he's locked in as one of the number one guys. He had 31 tackles, 5 passes defended, 3 interceptions, tied for most interceptions on the team. You talked about Markel Reed already, returning for his 6th year. He was injured in 2022, and he was coming back from injury in 2023, and he ended up getting replaced by Clark in the lineup prior to the Utah State game. And I think he was just kind of coming back from that injury in 22 and getting his feet underneath him, and he's a 6th-year guy with a lot of experience. And, of course, Kaniho, he's a senior this year. He was a starter to start 23, so a little bit of a reduced role. But, with Jalen Clark no longer right now as part of this lineup, he gets a chance to come back in, I think, and take over a heavy starting slot as well. And obviously at corner, it's not going to just be 2 guys. You'll have guys rotating in. But who do you expect? The guys we named or other guys on the roster, who do you guys expect kind of being those top 1 or 2 performers for Boise State? And then who do you expect maybe being a surprise guy that can come in and contribute this year?
One thing I'll say is I know you mentioned McCoy, is I always like when a corner doesn't have that many tackles and he plays every play, because it means, he's doing a good job. I'm not saying that he's missing tackles. I'm just saying, I played with a lot of good corners, and, their stats were almost underwhelming sometimes, was because they were doing their job, right? So, I'm fired up. There is a lot of talent there. I think some guys have proven themselves, but there's guys behind that are going to make them compete for it. And overall, I just feel great that there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of good guys coming in. There's a lot of good guys that played last year. So, hopefully we can put it all together and Bronco Nation be booming on Saturdays for the defense too.
Yeah, they got a lot of depth. So I'm excited about that. I think all those guys are very much capable of doing what we need them to do. So I'm excited about that, man. Having 4 corners like that you could just – that's insane. That's fun to have. So you never have, because a lot of times
packages.
Yeah, a lot of times the receivers, man, they go out run a fade ball. They have a new dude come in and run another one back to back. Imagine this: we have a corner run a fade ball, got another guy come right in and run it right with him again. That's pretty insane to have that type of matchup. So I think that's pretty fun. I think it's good for them to have that type of depth. I'm excited for them, man. I'm excited for them. All those guys are very much capable for sure.
Yeah, looking at it from the analyst side, my top 2 probably that you're going to see starting versus, Georgia Southern, probably be Amari McCoy and then Markel Reed. But I'm excited about all those guys. Every single one of them has a lot of potential. And, obviously Irby's a little bit of an unknown as far as what he'll do on the blue, but he did some great things with the Power 5 level at Cal. Big guy coming in. I think he's going to be excited. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about this Boise State secondary. I think, like I said, intro, we're talking about it. Boise State, the secondary is taking a lot of the fan hits, but I'm excited about the potential, the guys that are coming back, the increased pressure on the Boise State defensive line, and then the increased depth across these positions. I think you're going to see a very, very different performance. Is it going to be, top 20 in the nation? I don't know. I don't even know if it's going to be one of the best in school history or anything like that, but I definitely know that when you combine it with one of the best offenses in the country, one of the best special teams units in the country, and then a defense that I think is going to be improved. This looks like a team that can do great things this year. Last question on the secondary, and then we'll kind of wrap up this video. Do you expect Boise State's defense to be a little bit more turnover focused in 2024, kind of either just from an individual performance level or just schematically? We talked about Schnander doing great things at the turnover level. When he was at UCF, they were number 2 in the nation in turnover. So you bring in a defensive coordinator who is he's had a history of being a turnover type guy. The last time that Boise State had a player with 6 interceptions in a single season was 2014. It's been since 2014. Dante Dion was the last time that Boise State had a guy with 6 picks in a single season. Do you think that we have a guy in this roster that can get to 6 picks this year? And do you think that Boise State's defense will be more turnover focused?
Yes.
I mean, turnovers change the entire scope of the game. And they got to find a way to do it, but I think so.
I know Coach D's mindset.
Yeah.
He wants that ball. Coach D, that's one thing that he going to emphasize, man. That's one thing he was on us about whenever we were at Boise State. Like, you better get that ball, man. So, I think it's going to be a lot more turnovers. 6 picks, I mean, that's pretty – shoot, man. A lot of things that go your way for you get 6 picks in one season. It's pretty hard to get, man. Yeah. So, I mean, somebody may not have 6, but I feel like each person can have maybe like 4, maybe like 3. Like, you feel maybe develop. But if somebody gets 6, though, man, that's crazy. That's crazy work right there. But
I feel like McCoy.
When you hustle around, you'll get a few cheap ones, right? The tip.
Yeah, McCoy can get it. It's just McCoy can get it. It's really you got a quarterback. I don't know if they're gonna want to throw the ball that much against us this year, though. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to base it off of that. Sometimes you don't really get that many interceptions because most teams don't want to test you. So it's a testament to you as well. Or your D line don't even let you get done. Like that was our problem.
I'll take less picks if we're averaging under 200 yards passing a game. So
yeah, like the D line getting sacks and all that, man. Like, man, D line sometimes mess up your stats. So it just depends. It just depends. But I'm excited for him, man. I'm excited for him for sure.
This has kind of been a development since you played, Hunter, and as part of your time at Boise. Not maybe quite as much as a couple years before, but the turnover celebrations, the little bit of those motivators on the sideline. I think it was right before you got there, 2018, that they had the turnover thrown at Boise State, and the year before that, 2017, they had like the turnover bicycle, and they still had stuff, maybe not quite to that level. JL, do you see benefit from those? Are those motivators? Or are those just kind of like fun things on the sideline?
Yes, I think that's a very good thing for us because, like, for instance, we had the skulls. So you counted the skulls. Like, you remember how many skulls you got. So it was like we had little dog tags and stuff like that. So I think it just makes it fun because at the end of the day, it's like the turnovers is kind of like you're doing it for the team. So it's like the turnovers and the skulls is like that's why everybody came over and did it because that's it. You're getting the ball back for the family. You're getting the ball back for us so we can go back and score and we can put some more points. So it's like that thing, I think that's a good thing for college football. I think that's a good thing for us, especially because that just brings us all together and it just hypes us up. And it's like, man, we got 1 school, we got to get 2 more because we need 3 of them hanging up there by the end of each game. And we didn't get that, we was mad. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing for us for sure. And that's actually Coach D's thing. That was Coach D's thing. Like, so.
And obviously every day you're competing in practice, right? So the defense wants in the offense. But now when it's a game, the offense is like, they're cheering with you, they're chest bumping with you. And I think, or you have a backup that doesn't really play much to get a turnover. And it's like, that's the world to him, right? So now it's just good for the sport. It's good for the team. And it's just good momentum.
JL, would you be in favor of the turnover thrown returning?
I like the skulls more.
Okay.
Me personally. Yeah. I like the skulls more. That's just me personally. The throw was cool though. I saw the throw. That's how they got me here. I took a picture of the throw one time actually. The turnover thrown, but
it's easier to travel with the
That's true.
Yeah, I took a little picture with it, but I think that I like the skulls a lot more just because it was more fun and interactive than just sitting in the chair. But I don't know. It's up to Coach D, man. But I like it. I like the skulls. It's pretty cool to me.
Cool. All right. So our final section here before we kind of wrap up with a little bit of some summaries and predictions is just talking about some keys to the season. What Boise State defensively in each of these preview series, offense, defense, and special teams, will have 3 keys to the season for that section. So for the defense specifically, my number 1 key, we'll kind of talk about each of these as we go through, but my number 1 key is more pressure on the quarterback. I think we've covered that throughout the video. We've mentioned that, you got new and exciting playmakers in this recruiting class that are going to complement Hassany and those 6 defensive linemen that you guys brought over. There'll be some guys that need to develop, guys coming over from England that need to kind of learn a little bit more of the sport itself. So you'll have guys that need to develop and learn, but also what that means is you got guys that are wanting to prove themselves. And one of the best ways to do that is to fire someone off at the quarterback, say, go get them and take your speed and your energy It's win that one-on-one and go down and get the quarterback. So I think you're going to have a well-rested and motivated defense with Boise State's exciting, explosive, run-focused offense, which is hopefully, I think that's probably what we're going to see. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the offensive preview. But for Boise State this year, I think the offense is going to create a defense that's well-rested and ready to come out on the field, well-motivated with a lot more points hopefully being scored. And I think that clearly it was an issue last year that Spencer Danielson identified, a little bit of that lack of pressure. I mean, it's something that's not a hidden fact. I think we're going to see an increased focus on getting pressure on the quarterback this season. So I'm excited to see what happens this year. But my number one key is more pressure on that quarterback is going to be fix a lot of woes for this defense this year.
I agree too, and I think we talked about it earlier. I mean, I think it's funny. I'm going to talk something about 13 years ago, but Coach Peterson brought up an NFL stat to us one time and said the biggest blockage in a series or to stop them from scoring points is a sack. And it's just like the percentage of an NFL. Hey, if you give up a sack in a drive, you're only going to score like 4% of the time.
Kills drives.
So it just kills drives. It's not only a lost play, it's a lost play backwards. So if they get more pressure, more sacks, I mean, that's going to make everything better. So I agree.
For key number 2 for Boise State, I've got more consistent coverage out of the defensive backs. And I think you're going to see that with the improved experience level coming back with the secondary. And also increased depth at those positions. Maybe guys not getting quite as tired throughout the game. Boise State's got the no more deep balls. There was a lot of times last year that games kind of got out of hand. The offense maybe wasn't ticking up and performing as they should. Defense got left out there on an island by itself. And with a lot of time for the quarterback to throw, which kind of goes back to that key number 1, there was a lot of deep balls, especially late in games where Boise State started to give it up. And I think that the better pressure will reduce that, more experienced players. And then Eric Shenander's turnover-focused defense. I think that we're going to see a defense this year that is building its own momentum from those turnovers and also just a little bit more consistent coverage overall out of the experience level of these guys coming back. I think you're going to see a major improvement. So that's my key number 2 is just a little bit more better consistent and more consistent coverage out of the defensive backs.
I like that. I agree.
Yeah, I agree. Pressure and coverage work together. So more pressure, better coverage, more pressure. So just improving on both will just benefit them guys in the long run for sure.
Not leaving those guys out there in islands and man coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, key number 3, and this one kind of goes back to you, JL, here, but reestablish that hard-hitting aggression. I mean, your class, it wasn't just you. I already talked about Tyreek Jones and some other guys that were also big, but I just felt like in 2022, we had so many hard hitters. It was like every single game, there was a top 10, should have been on ESPN Center, top 10 hit coming out of those games. And especially in 2022, you and Tyreek Jones out there were just laying the lumber on every single tackle. In 2023, there were some guys that were flying around and making big hits. Simpson, I thought, had some really big hits throughout the season. I kind of thought he took over as that kind of physical leader on defense. But it was a little bit of a drop-off because when you lose guys at that experience level and you're kind of having to focus a little bit more on the basics of the X's and O's, you don't have quite as much room and mentality to go out and just focus on playing free and loose and making those big plays. So this year, Boise State's got a little bit more experience level coming back, and I think they need to build that momentum and energy and set the tone on defense. Play with abandon and leave nothing on the field. I think that you're going to see a locker room under Spencer Danielson that is playing a lot looser. Like you already said, Hunter, kind of just letting loose and having fun out there. They know the coaches have their back. They know that they trust them, and it goes both ways. I think you're going to see a Boise State defense that is playing with a lot more naked aggression this year, and that's going to be my key number 3. So key number 1, more pressure on the quarterback. Key number 2, more consistent coverage out of the DBs, and just reestablish that hard-hitting aggression. Maybe a couple of times a targeting foul gets called, but hey, in the end, the momentum out of that big hit is going to be worth it. So that's my 3 keys to the game or season for Boise State.
I like it. Yeah, and I think too, JL knows when you hit like he does, everyone else wants to be the guy and hit like that too. So.
Yeah. It just takes one guy to get started.
One guy.
So once the guy gets, once one guy gets it, and from there on, it's like fireworks, man. It's like fireworks. So one guy just has to set it off, maybe get a targeting. Maybe not though, because it's college. It's a lot different in the league. So
it's like the bat.
It's not getting targeting, but let's
Bass Bros and Mighty Ducks, but
as close as we can to it. And then let's just set it off, man. So I know a lot of those guys on my team can hit too as well. You play defense, you got some stuff in you, so you just got to bring it out at the right time. So yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. All right, so last section here, and we are almost done. Thanks, everybody, for sticking around and being part of this. It's been a great discussion. But just summarizing for Boise State with a little bit of predictions here, I think, and I've mentioned it already, but I think Boise State takes a significant step forward on defense this year. I'm not saying that they're going to be every player is going to be all conference or this is going to be the best defense in the group of five or even the Mountain West. But I think that overall you are going to see a defense that is highly competitive. Sure, they'll give up some big plays. Every good defense gives up big plays. But they're going to be a defense that complements that offense, that complements that special teams, and is a contributing factor to success, and not something that at the end of the year you're looking back and saying, okay, that was something that was holding us back. So for Boise State defense this year, because of all the reasons we've said, and primarily because of the experience level and the guys that they are bringing in, Boise State's defense was already going to be better because it can't get worse than the previous year when those guys are already coming back with better experience. So it was already going to get better with the guys being more experienced. And then Boise State went out in this recruiting class. And again, I highly encourage everyone to watch that video I did breaking down the defensive recruiting class. But when you watch their tape, when you look at the statistics that some of these guys have already done at the collegiate level, either at the FBS or FCS or Division II, the JUCO leagues, when you see what these guys are capable of doing, the level of players that Boise State brought in this recruiting class are going to significantly elevate this defense. These aren't just guys that are coming in to be a background presence. These are guys that are going to come in and contribute right off the bat, in addition to everybody else being better coming back themselves. You're going to see everyone, like you said, Hunter, a couple times, each person elevating each other. So I think Boise State takes a massive step forward. I think you see a massive improvement in the edge pressure for it going after the quarterback. I mean, that defensive line is going to be better, but I think that you're going to see some guys like some of those guys I talked about from the transfer classes coming in that are going to significantly increase the pressure coming off of the edge. So it's not just Ahmad Hassanin out there. He'll be taking on the double teams. And then you've got some absolute firecrackers in the recruiting class that came in and some guys that are hungry to improve and to prove themselves from last year as well. So I think you're going to see some significant improvement on that edge pressure. Boise State being able to go with that 3 or 4 man rush and still get through to the quarterback and at a consistent level. And then the last part here is I think that Boise State secondary will still have a little bit of growing pains. I think that there's still some things that need to improve here. Like I said, I don't think the secondary is necessarily going to be the number one secondary in the defense in the conference, but they're going to be much stronger overall. I see them having 15 plus picks this year. And I think that Amari McCoy is going to have 5 interceptions and potentially get to that 6 or more level if some things break his way. So that's my overall summary and predictions. You guys can go with any thoughts you have on ending this year for Boise State.
Yeah, I agree. I think that whole defense is going to be a lot better. Excited for those guys. Like I said, man, that experience goes a long way. So them having a whole year to gel together, just coming back to do it again, especially how they finished out those last 4 games. I'm excited for those guys. And, yeah, time will tell, man. Those guys are probably going to be one of the best defenses in the Mountain West this year.
And they know what they're capable of.
Yeah, they know they're capable of as well. They've won. So, I'm excited for those guys, man. I really am. It's going to be a great season. It really is.
And I always think, too, you learn more from your failures than you do successes. And I think they got both last year,
yeah.
Right? I mean, I think they, a lot of adversity, but then they, winning a Mountain West with what happened last year and the start of last year
exactly
is a huge victory. And that's a lot of momentum. And then Coach D coming in and just really kind of keeping that momentum going. Schedule's very tough next year, but, I'm excited. So I'm double digit wins next year. So that's my goal. That's my goal for the team.
I love that you mentioned that schedule because that's my very final question is, will it be enough? The improvements that Boise State's making in the front 7, the secondary, they say that championship winning teams are built on their defense. Championships are built on defense. So our defense wins championships. So this year they've got to play Oregon with Dylan Gabriel. They have to play Oregon State and Washington State. Both of those are going to be at home. This isn't a schedule preview per se, but they got some tough teams on that schedule. Do you see this being a Boise State team that wins the conference, and do you see this being a Boise State team that represents in the first ever legitimate playoffs this year as a group of 5 rep?
We'll go 2-1 in those 3 non-conference games. I guess they're not really all Pac-12 anymore. None of them are, but I'm confident. I think they win the Mountain West. I think it's 10 plus wins. Some of where the chips may fall are out of our control. The NCAA is going to be the NCAA or the playoff committee, but if we just go out, win the Mountain West, win every game at home, be a good start.
Yeah, Mountain West easy. CFP. It just depends if the committee wants to,
You know how they are. We could
Yeah,
be,
you know
we
how
could
they
be
get.
12.
You know how
but
they
they-
get.
oh, no, 14.
Yeah, you know how they get. So I'm not even gonna speak on it, but yeah, Mount West. Oh yeah.
So, JL, you see this as being a 10-plus win team like Hunter?
Yeah, I do. 10 plus. For sure.
Well, thanks everybody for watching this and being part of this discussion. Thanks so much, JL and Hunter, for coming on. I'm incredibly excited for the offensive preview and the special team previews that will be coming out. For the first time ever, I will announce who the guests are going to be on the offense and special teams preview. So for the offensive preview, we're going to be having Mike Sanford coming on to help preview the offense. And then a former teammate of yours, Hunter, for the special teams preview, we're going to have Kyle Brotzman coming on. So I'm incredibly excited for both of those guys and the breakdowns of what are going to be two of the top position groups in the Mountain West there in the offense and the special teams specifically. But this has been a great discussion. Obviously, the defense, like we said, was kind of the big question mark coming back this year. Hopefully, we've given fans a little bit of some answers, hopefully, and some hope coming into next year, into this coming season. We kind of lifted the curtain a little bit about what fans may be expecting. Hope that everybody has enjoyed this. Again, I encourage you to watch the breakdown of the signing class. Watch my reaction to Dirk Koetter and the hiring, what that might mean for Boise State, and also watch my recent interview with George Halani as he prepares to advance to the next level of professional football here. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Links to all those videos will be in the description. Thanks again, JL. Thanks again, Hunter, for coming on and being part of this discussion. It's been a great one. Keep an eye out for those offensive previews and special teams previews. Make sure you like, subscribe. And before I close out, I'll just say, let you guys say anything else you want to say. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. And JL, good luck this year. Good luck to health and everything. Excited to root for you. And obviously, every time we got another Bronco in the league, and obviously a Bronco. So, good luck to you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you for having me. Nice to meet you as well, Hunter. And yeah, thank you, man. It's gonna be a good year this year. So I'm excited for it. Not for only my year, but for the Boise State as well. And yeah, I'm really excited for this next year. And I thank you guys for having me today. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun little time for sure. Especially I got to talk about it with 50 at 3.
Yeah, that's right.
I ain't never did that ever.
I'm still living in my Uncle Rico days, but I did.
You got crazy rings.
I did the side by side. Who wore it better, me or Jordan? I got the same 6 rings on.
Got the jewelry, man. That's what I'm saying, man. You crazy for that, man. That's nice. That's it for sure.
Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for both of you guys giving up your time to come on and spend an hour plus talking about Boise State football. It's been a great time. And thank you, everybody who stayed all the way to the end and watched through all this. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts on the season. Do you agree? Do you think there's other hurdles the defense may need to cover? How do you think Boise State addresses these? And let us know your thoughts. I love having that discussion with all the viewers in the comments section as well, and getting to be part of that discussion, giving you guys an opportunity to be part of our discussion here. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and as always, go Big Blue.
Thank you, guys.